And welcome back to another live stream. I am Chris Short, again, Principal Technical Marketing Manager at Red Hat on the OpenShift team. I am joined this stream by the one and only, the very hard to pin down, Jimmy Alvarez from the ACM team, the Advanced Cluster Management team here at Red Hat. Jimmy, do me a favor, introduce yourself to the folks. Tell us, your background a little bit and why you're the right person to talk to us about this.
Yeah. Man. Kind of funny. Not that hard to find. I can,
No, I can find you easy.
you
I
can
just can't
find me. You can pin me easy.
pin you. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, so hello everybody and welcome. Very excited to be here and be doing this with Chris. Be hearing very good things about these Twitch streams. So
Thank
pretty
you.
excited. So yeah, as Chris said, my name is Jimmy Alvarez, and I am a principal product marketing manager here at Red Hat. 100% focused on Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management for Kubernetes. So
Nice.
we have some pretty good stuff for you today. Where we're gonna walk through some stuff. We're gonna go through the setup. So you're gonna watch me kind of go through the installation of the product, and we'll talk through hopefully some of the things that are kind of going through in the background, and that you guys kind of feel it and see it. And then we'll go and configure a cluster. We'll build a cluster, Kubernetes cluster on AWS through ACM, of course. And then finally, I think we'll configure some applications, perhaps, maybe some security policy governance,
Nice.
and that should take us home.
Yeah.
So,
So like so to give people a context of like my background with the product so far is I participated in a testathon
hmm
a little more than a month ago. I feel like now, of course,
it
days
was,
feel
yeah,
like days feel like years now, but whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So the testathon, right, like was super fun for me because it was my first time getting hands on the product. Everybody expected there to be bugs, and we got to find them, we got to identify them, we got to help fix them, and it was super cool and super entertaining. But like my eyes were like boom the whole time I was playing with the product because I just saw so much potential and all the things you can do. And there's really, I feel like there's probably more than just three facets to the product, but like three big pieces of the product, right? Like there's that security and compliance piece, right? You can just flip a switch and check for NIST compliance. I feel like that's pretty cool
Yeah.
as a feature
It's
there,
it's
right?
it's huge. It's
It's
huge
huge,
because
right? Like it's
a lot
giant.
of people don't have that. Yeah,
A lot,
yeah.
yeah. Like if you're in an organization that needs to be able to say I'm this compliant, like this is a great tool for you. Then there's the application management portion of it, which was just mind blowing in of itself because we're talking multi-cluster application management, which is amazing. And then there's just the actual Kubernetes cluster, OpenShift cluster management side of things, which like this is all in one product, which I think is amazing. And it's super great because it's all right there as a pane of glass that you just dive into all three of these things with. Right.
Yeah,
And
I mean, the beauty of it is that I feel like, for a long time, OpenShift has been the leader in the market when it comes to
mhm,
Kubernetes and when it comes to provisioning containers, right? I mean, that's undisputed. I mean, you look at Gartner, you look at Forrester, you look at everybody that looks at, this space, and OpenShift has been always number one.
right.
But there was always an element that kind of was missing from that, which is having the management layer, right? Because while yes, you can have multiple OpenShift instances, obviously
Mhm,
provision between multi-sites and all of that, there's still that, as you start adding more and more and more clusters, it becomes more of a complex environment, right? And it starts becoming a mammoth to be able to manage all of this stuff, right? Where you have to kind of switch back and forth between screens and logins and all of this, right? So
yes.
to have one centralized place, I think you put it really well. Having a centralized place where you can go and look at all your clusters, see what you have within your environment, being able to manage them, do updates, and being able to assign applications to specific clusters and move them around, and being able
Mm-hmm.
to actually scale them out or scale them back in, being able to go and apply policies, right? Because
That policy
obviously
management
the
piece.
policy
Oof.
management piece is huge.
Yeah. And it's such a
You know,
bear to manage, right? Like
it
managing
is.
policy in general is a bear, right?
Always has been, always has been. And it
Always.
doesn't matter about what kind of workload you have, whatever it might be a virtual machine, whatever it might be a bare metal, doesn't really matter. Having that management layer where you can make sure that you are compliant and you are exactly the same across all your workloads is huge.
Yeah.
That's and our policy engine is very flexible. That's the biggest thing too, where you can let your imagination kind of run wild and you can create policies that might just apply. They might not be a standard, but they might apply to your organization, to your specific needs, right?
Right.
That's when it really becomes really, really big. So,
Awesome. Let's
so
dive in, man.
yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. You know, I have a couple of slides. I know that most people probably like, oh no, slides. I don't want to be
Eh,
bothered with that.
we need,
Yay.
we need some layer,
And we
some
need context, right? We need
context.
context. Yeah,
Context is everything, right?
listen, when you're building a house, so you just don't go and build a house, right? You need to have a foundation for that house. This is the
Mm,
foundation. There
yeah.
you go.
Ta-da.
All right, so I got a few things here. You know, don't mind this agenda. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
very fluid, right? But we'll go through it. So the first thing that we want to kind of talk a little bit about is the market trends, right? So we kind of touched a little bit on this earlier when we were
Hmm.
talking with Chris, but you know, obviously you see the trend is multi-cloud, being able to have the ability to have multiple workloads, whatever they might be on your data center, whatever it might be on another off-prem data center that you have, or even in the public cloud. Obviously, we're seeing the trend is it has been doing this for years. This is not even just like you know, containers thing. This is just you know, a workloads issue where you're able to kind of have multiple workloads everywhere, and being able to manage them becomes really complex. We talked about, you know, being able to manage these and have standards or policies across all of them is also complicated, right? You can kind of see here some of these results from the survey that IDC did pre-COVID. This is 2019. These numbers
Yeah.
are probably even bigger now, considering all of this situation, right? As we all know, we're all working from home. We're all, you know, there is this trend now where, you know, more and more stuff being moved into the cloud. So
Yeah.
we need to manage those workloads somehow. You can't just, it can't be a wild west. So we're starting to see obviously that trend, and it's been going upwards for a while.
Hmm.
um, Obviously, you know, the more Kubernetes clusters that you start adopting within your environment, you're going to have that multi-cluster, right?
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, that you need to be able to manage all of them from a single pane of glass. Because if you don't have that standards, then you're just going to have developers kind of going through and building stuff on the side, and you know, having shadow IT where you have just
Hmm.
them putting their credit cards and just getting a couple of workloads so they can get their application kind of built. But that, you know, if you really think about it, you need to be able to kind of standardize in some of that stuff, because you can't let them run free and wild, unfortunately. We need to have some kind of uh, uh, standards for all of these, right? So, you know, whatever those might be for disaster recovery, whatever those might be for going into production, it doesn't really matter. They're, you know, the trend is there. The adoption, obviously, of Kubernetes is increasing, right? Kubernetes, fairly new technology, around since 2014, right? I mean, it's
Hmm.
6, 7 years now, right? But obviously, I think that now we're starting to see that shift from like oh, it's the wild wild west. Everybody can do whatever they want with their Kubernetes deployments. But now we're starting to see where we need more standards around it, right?
Yeah, and we've seen this shift from one cluster to multiple clusters, right? Like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
just this natural
it's
evolution that
natural.
the market has done, right? Itself, right? Like the
Yeah,
market has just shifted towards this, and we're picking up along with it, right?
exactly, exactly. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's more and more people. It's an adoption thing, right? Obviously, it reminds me a lot of virtualization. When first virtualization
Mm,
came around, it's the
mm,
same thing. If you really think about it, if you eliminate, the fact that you have Kubernetes, you have virtualization, you have bare metal, you have public cloud, whatever, right? The problems are the same.
yeah.
Underlying, everything is exactly the same.
Mhm.
Whatever you want to call the technology at the end that's delivering that workload, sure, call it whatever. But the problems are all the same. And when, especially at a scale,
Right.
they become, all these standards need to be there.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the way, not to sorry to interrupt you again, but the way
no,
I,
that's
I
good.
look at it is, I used to work for a data center company way back in the day, and we looked at density as per floor tile. How
Mhm.
much compute can we get per floor tile?
Yeah, we did that too.
Right.
I work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was about
Yeah.
maybe 20 years ago for me.
Right. So like, but when it's that same paradigm is still
Yeah,
going, right? Like we're
it
still
is.
squeezing, capacity out of the existing compute we have, right?
Right,
Like when you move from VMs to containers, you get more, there's less overhead and usually less overhead and you
usually.
get more compute for your money basically.
Right,
Then that's
exactly.
really where the dollars and cents come in, right?
Exactly, exactly. And you can kind of see that in this slide right here, right? So you can kind of see where we're kind of seeing that growth within the cluster deployments, right? Usually everything, especially with Kubernetes, starts from a dev team, right?
Hmm.
So it starts with a need from a developer that, hey, I need to build this application, but I don't want to go through and wait, you know, a week, sometimes a month to get an infrastructure to be able to deploy this, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
they start looking for alternatives. Oh,
Hmm.
what's so easy? You can go to EC2, sign up with a credit card. You can go and provision Kubernetes clusters all day, right? Or you can do also virtual machine, whatever you can, whatever you want. But obviously, you can kind of see that the trend starts from here, and then it
Right.
starts moving into like, oh, they start seeing the value, right? So then, okay, well, how do we get some of this into the QA so we can make sure that before we go into production, right? But the hesitation from a lot of folks is going from dev and test to prod with some of these workloads. Same thing that we saw for virtualization. Again, it's I've been in the industry for a very long time. I saw the beginning of a virtualization. As a matter of fact, I was right up on the upfront of it. I used to work for VMware, so I saw a lot of that growth, and I saw a lot of the pains that a lot of organizations kind of went through. And this is the same thing, right? So, obviously there's multiple reasons why you would want to kind of deploy clusters, right? We talked a little bit about these, right?
Yeah.
Anything, from reducing latency to application availability to even avoid vendor locked in, right? This is a big topic that has been coming more and more and more, right? So being able
Mhm.
to avoid having that logged in, and this is one of the beauty things with Red Hat, right? Being that we're open source, makes things a lot easier. um, edge deployments, right? I talk a lot with telcos. This is their next big thing. 5G 5G, well, it's a very much evolving technology right now.
Yeah.
You need a lot of repeaters everywhere to be able to kind of even uh, remotely get people close to those speeds. That means a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
little deployments everywhere, right?
Mhm.
With Kubernetes clusters running on the background, running those workloads, right? For those towers, and you're going to
Yeah.
need a lot of them. So the edge deployments are something that's again we're seeing a huge uptake on. So you can kind of see here some of these. Obviously, disaster recovery, that's something that's been around for a very long time. Obviously, a lot of folks go through that as well.
Hmm.
So you can kind of see all of these kind of reasons, right? And so, the idea here is to, ACM can help you with your deployments, which doesn't matter at what stage you're in. You
Yeah,
can be,
helps you across the spectrum.
yeah, it helps you across the spectrum. You can just be like, hey, listen, I have, 5, 6 clusters. I want to be able to manage them in a single point of glass. I want to be able to do upgrades. I want to be able to just manage them. We can help you there, right? That's we call this the crawl, walk, run approach, right? Where regardless of whatever you are in the stage, right? Wherever you are a developer, just kind of looking for, having all your clusters and being able to kind of provision them and manage them quickly, to having a more complex environment where you're starting to put stuff into production, right? And you want to have policies that are being enforced and application deployments that are being properly done, to the final, end all stage, which is the hybrid multi-cloud, right? That is the
Right.
end all, like, hey, this is the promised land, right?
The place
Uh,
we've all been trying to get to,
the planes have been going to for years. This
where the
is
compute
this
doesn't matter and
right.
the vendor is, irrelevant or, less relevant, I guess.
I,
Yeah, like,
I always laugh at the term serverless because it's just, to me, it's just so funny. There's still a server. You're still
yeah,
processing workloads. Like, to
yeah,
me, like
yeah, yeah.
like that is
Stateless.
stateless. It's like,
Yeah, there's got to be states somewhere along the chain, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
regardless of what you call it, the problems are the same. So
Hmm.
so you can kind of see that trend, right? So we talked about it as different personas, right? We're trying to break this down because obviously, um, different personas within the organizations are going to have different needs for the product. So, in the case of IT operations, so like a knock, or a DevOps persona, right? That
Hmm.
is actually looking at managing those clusters. These are the questions that they ask, like, how can I manage these clusters? How can I get to a root cause of a problem if I have a problem, right? How do I monitor usage, right? So these are some of the questions that these personas kind of usually kind of go through when they talk about, implementing something like this.
Hmm.
From an SRE perspective, they don't care about monitoring, they don't care about managing those clusters, they don't care about that. They just want to simplify seeing their application, how they can manage that application easier, how they can promote code easier, right? And basically get their development much accelerated, right, than it is today. So that's usually what the SRE kind of DevOps persona looks like. And the SecOps persona is more looking at the security. So we talked a little bit about this, right?
Hmm.
The the security persona is probably the least liked persona within an organization because it's the one that's always like, well, is that
Typical
compliant?
story of no.
Right,
Yeah, the
exactly.
Department of No, right? Like,
The
we,
Department of No.
yeah,
Exactly right.
yeah.
Exactly right. So
We
so
love our friends in security, but we need
it
to work together better.
exactly. It's kind of like a lawyer, if you look at it that way,
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, that lawyer's going to keep you safe in the long term, right?
That is true. I mean, the whole point is to avoid. I always say to my customers, is like, the biggest thing for these organizations, the security, is to avoid getting you on the 5 o'clock news. Oh, big
Oh
data
yeah.
breach, right? Big data breach, or big hack, tons of information stolen, right? Like,
Mm,
you want to avoid that at all costs.
yeah.
So they're
Yeah,
very
front page
important.
news is not where you want to be in that
No,
regard. Yeah.
nope, nope. And we've seen it time and time again
Mhm.
throughout the years, right? And as more organizations kind of move into the cloud, that's the biggest concern, right? What happens to my data? What happens if somebody hacks me? What happens, right? So this is why it's important to have those standards. And so, with all of that said, let's talk a little bit about advanced cluster management for Kubernetes and how we can help kind of solve some of these problems. So as Chris kind of alluded to, obviously we have the three main use cases that we look at. We try to simplify this and make it as easy as possible. We understand that obviously having, it's yet another product to have
Mm,
within your data center. It's yet another, thing. So we want to kind of simplify it. Obviously, Kubernetes in the Kubernetes technology, it's all about simplification, right? It's all about simplifying workloads. It's all about, kind of maximizing your resources, right? We want to do the same with this product. So we looked at three things: the multi-cluster lifecycle management, the policy-driven governance and security, and the application lifecycle. So we talked a little bit about all of those. So we'll go deeper into these. The thing to know here is that we are currently tech preview. This product will be going GA very, very shortly, within the next month.
yes.
So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, I understand that a lot of organizations that right now they're like, tech preview, whatever. But we're going GA soon, very soon,
Yeah.
like within a month.
Yeah.
So we're ready. We're ahead of a lot of our competitors.
Yeah, and part of the pinning down of Jimmy, as I was alluding to earlier, was getting to this point where it's like, okay, the application is stable enough that we can safely demonstrate it to the world without there being like major changes between now and release, right?
Right.
Or now in
Ex-
GA, I should say. Yeah,
exactly right. Exactly
yeah,
right. So that, we just wanted to make sure that when I came in here, I had enough meat in the bones to kind of give you guys, right?
exactly.
That's the pin down comment. and so and so if we look at if we look at these use cases and we start diving a little bit deeper, right? So the unified multi-cluster management, as the name states, is all about having that centralized location where you can have all of your Kubernetes clusters. But then you're going to tell me, but wait, Jimmy, what if I have already EKS clusters, or I have GKS, or any other kind of public cloud Kubernetes type of offering?
Yeah,
The beauty of this product is that you can manage those too. So we are not limiting you to just manage OpenShift. Obviously, the best functionality comes with OpenShift, right? Obviously, OpenShift and ACM working together is the ultimate experience. But if you already have invested in some of these other open source Kubernetes clusters, right? Like I said, like GKS, AKS, EKS, there's so many of them, right?
yeah,
You can have them out there and you can manage them with this solution. You can at least have them in a centralized place. You can look at them. You can go and sort through resources and move applications. So you can do a lot of that management, like day-to-day stuff that you need to do for your product.
yeah. And it's important to point out, right? Like, OpenShift runs, OpenShift 4.4 runs this version of Kubernetes. EKS runs that version of Kubernetes. AKS runs another version of Kubernetes. GKE runs yet another version of Kubernetes. I don't think there's alignment in any of those right now. And
No,
having uh, the capability to say like, I need Kubernetes 117 or higher because of this application or this workload's, needs. Like this will help you with that. This will help
ex-
you figure out which cluster is what.
exactly. And being able to kind of see where. So a lot of the thing with Kubernetes too is that while it's all about simplifying, it can also be very complicated, and that's where a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people really get scared, right? um, Kind of looking through and seeing where my resources are, because it does a very good job at hiding a lot of the stuff that you maybe are supposed to have some kind of information about, right? But
Mm,
you don't necessarily have that visibility. But with ACM, you will.
yeah.
And so obviously, we have the policy base and governance, right? So being able to once again centralize all your stuff within the product. But at the next level is adding some of the industry standards that exist today. So like FISMA, NIST, PCI. right? Having all of those standards out of the box is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I can tell you with confidence, no other management, Kubernetes management product out there does this. We are the only ones right now that have this type of visibility into the policies. Um, some of them do policies at a very high level where you can kind of
Mm,
customize some of them, uh, but it's not about like the standards. So we
right.
have that
It's very
visibility.
much a build your own thing
Right,
versus
right. Which
apply a standard, right? Yeah.
exactly, which again, it kind of just furthers the problem into, once again, you don't have your standards, you're just kind of going down the same circle again, right? So
Hmm.
you're going to come back to that same spot again because that security person is going to be knocking on your door saying, hey, guess what, these policies that you're putting in place are not standards. So how can you prove to me that we are secure, right? So
Yeah.
having that visibility into all of that, and seeing who's compliant and who's not, huge.
Yeah.
And application lifecycle management, right? So we talked a little bit about the developers and how developers, you know, all they care about is getting their application out there, getting their application rolling, getting their application established, and getting it done quickly, right? So being able to deploy an application with what we call labels, which are just another term for tags, right? So being able to take an application and deploy it to multiple clusters once you already build it, right? Being able to kind of refer back to your GitHub, right, and just pull manifests from there, right, or Helm charts. You have that easy of use and easy of management of applications, and visualize it. So you can kind of see here in this slide, and you can visualize an application. You can visualize each individual component of that application too. So you can quickly pinpoint an issue if you're having it within an application, or scale it out into another cluster as well.
Nice.
So, we talked a little bit about uh, um, obviously OpenShift and ACM, or Advanced Cluster Manager for Kubernetes. So you're gonna hear me. I'm done saying the whole name. It's a long name. So from now, I'm gonna call it ACM. I feel like
Thank you.
we're all
Yeah.
we're
We're all
all
friends here
we're
now.
all friends here now. So let's talk ACM. So ACM and OpenShift, as we talked about it, obviously they work better together. So ACM itself runs on top of OpenShift. So you are required to have an OpenShift cluster, 4.3.5 or above, in order for you to be able to run ACM.
Mm,
And how do we help OpenShift be better? So we touched a little bit about this in the beginning, but basically these are the four main things that we're kind of like product mission, if you will.
okay.
Um, we're looking to accelerate the development to production, the being able to have more OpenShift or more Kubernetes workloads within your production environment. Obviously, being that Kubernetes is fairly young, a lot of organizations kind of look at it as, it's still an evolving technology. There's not many standards out there. We want to be able to kind of accelerate that confidence level,
Yeah.
because we know that OpenShift obviously is, as I mentioned, is the standard when it comes to Kubernetes.
Mm,
So we want to be able to kind of push that forward and being able to kind of help with that adoption, right? Help you as a consumer, kind of help that adoption for your data center, right? Reduce the cost. So maybe, instead of having kind of different types of Kubernetes distros, right, spread all over the place, right? Why not just standardize? Or even better, maybe reduce some of that operational costs by having more stuff either on-prem or even on another data center, whatever the case
hmm.
might be. But just being able to look at what you have and perhaps reduce some of the costs. Maybe I don't need that many clusters out there.
Yeah.
I can run more workloads if I run it more efficiently, right? It's all
Right.
about being efficient.
Exactly.
right? Increase the application availability. So have your application be more available all times, right? Being able to distribute it quicker, move it around different clusters, do all of that. In the compliance, we talked, I think, enough about the compliance. I think you all get it. We just need to have standards. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's just the way of the world. We need to have
Yeah,
them.
and people require standards, right? Like
Yeah.
operation, if you're not going to run a bank without standards, you're not going to
No.
run your
Nope.
workloads in any kind of credit card transaction processing manner without a standard being applied for security, right? And just the NIST standard alone, which covers, I think, any government or government contractor,
Yep.
is just a bear to manage on just the Linux OS alone. Can't even
Yep.
imagine what it'd be like in Kubernetes land, right? Like I've never NIST stigged a Kubernetes cluster before until ACM came along. So, yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
the capabilities that ACM gives you in the compliance realm was just wow, like just wow.
Yeah. It's pretty significant. So I have a little bit of the pricing and packaging stuff. So I'm gonna skip that for now.
Okay, thank you.
And we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the architecture because I feel like
Yeah,
this is important to kind of touch through, right?
that's what this audience wants.
As yeah, this audience don't want the marketing stuff. They want the technical stuff. I get it.
Yep,
I get it.
yep.
All right. So from an architecture perspective, so as I mentioned earlier, ACM itself runs on top of OpenShift,
Mhm.
4.3.5 and above, right? The way it works is that we install through the Operator Hub. So
Nice.
you'll see that today. Obviously, the Operator Hub has become the standard de facto for deploying applications within an OpenShift environment, right? So
Mhm.
we follow that same suit. We deploy what we call a hub cluster. So within that hub cluster, there's a few components, and you'll see those today when we deploy it. But basically, the three main ones that we kind of look at, right, is there's an API engine, a console, obviously, that you're going to interact with, and a CLI. Once you deploy that, one important thing to note is that the whatever OpenShift cluster that you're deploying ACM to, it needs to be just for ACM. So currently, we are not able to kind of share workloads within this cluster with other
Mhm.
applications. Um, Eventually, we have in the roadmap to be able to kind of expand some of that functionality, but not as it works today.
And part of that is resource requirements. Part of that
Yes,
is just maintaining simplifying
simplicity.
operations, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
the the fact that ACM has to run on its own thing is probably for the best, right? Like if you had ACM running with other things and then all of a sudden you destroyed ACM on accident,
exactly. You don't
you
know,
might
right?
have destroyed other things on accident,
Right.
right? Like you don't
Yeah, you could have deleted the namespace. You could have deleted a container
uh,
that perhaps, or
the
upgraded a
whole
container that,
whole
yeah,
cluster potentially.
right,
Yeah, you don't
potentially,
know.
right.
Yeah, so yeah, like having I completely understand the need for the standaloneness of it, but I also would appreciate, it is Kubernetes after all, right? Like if I could throw a big enough cluster at it and I
Yep,
could run everything in it, why not?
right.
So yeah, I appreciate the roadmap item too.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
and that's definitely
absolutely.
something I gave feedback on the testathon for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the beauty of this is that obviously you're not limited to running this on-prem. So
Yeah, you can put this anywhere.
while yeah, while ACM itself it's not a SaaS solution, so you can't go to like cloud.redhat.com, which is our SaaS portal, right, and order as a service like you can with OpenShift today. You could order an OpenShift cluster, right, and have ACM, throw ACM on top of it, right? So this
Yeah,
can run in any cloud anywhere, right? It can
right.
run on AWS, Google, right? They all have, we have big partnerships with all of these clouds where
Mhm.
we can run OpenShift dedicated, and we can just install ACM on top of it, because again, it's just an OperatorHub item, right? So
Right.
you just install it that way.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of ACM. Like, even if you don't have the on-prem resources to get going today, you could do it, in a public cloud.
Yeah.
Obviously, once you install it, once you configure it, right, then you have those managed clusters, right? So those clusters that whatever they already exist that you want to just onboard or import into ACM, or clusters that you want to build through ACM. They
Hmm.
work the same, right?
Yep.
They become what we call the managed cluster, and within those, there's a few things that we deploy. So we deploy a few containers, and you'll see through when we go through some of that stuff, right? But basically, we deploy a few containers that report back into the hub, right? And kind of just bring into within the hub all of the information that is needed in order for
Hmm.
us to manage that. So that is basically like the architecture from a ACM perspective. Very simple, very easy. We're not, again, we did not want to change a lot of the architecture and kind of not make it very compliant or easy to work with OpenShift
Right.
and ACM together, right?
Makes
Um,
total
uh,
sense.
yep, yep,
And OpenShift's got all those tools and knobs and levers and everything already packed
yeah,
in, so that
ex-
running an ACM is actually a little bit easier in OpenShift than like
exactly. Oh yeah,
other platforms.
absolutely. Not that it's a lot easier to run it just because of
Hmm.
this, the operator hub IO, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can kind of see here some of the installation, and we'll walk through it, but just at a high level, as I mentioned, 4.3.5 and above. Um, from a management perspective of clusters, so clusters that we can manage, we
Hmm.
go back all the way to 3.11. So think about
Nice.
this. Here's another use case that it's kind of like underlined, but not really talked about.
Oh, I see where you're going. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Think about migration.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have a 3.11, you're gonna have to be thinking about migration. I'm sorry, it's time, right? And
Yeah.
so if you're thinking about migration, ACM can help you kind of shift some of these workloads into your newer clusters, right?
That's true. Yeah. So you could
So
spin up your first 4 cluster as your ACM
right,
cluster, and then you could use it to start banging out, 4x
workloads,
clusters and
right?
moving workloads over.
Exactly,
That's a
exactly.
beautiful, beautiful use case right there.
Yeah, so again, as we start thinking through, obviously, more and more stuff that we can do, think of that. Think of,
Hmm.
if you have a 311 cluster, you want to migrate it, you need to, right? So ACM can help you there. um, as I mentioned, we have support for public cloud Kubernetes, right? We actually do support pretty much any kind of Kubernetes distro. So as
Right.
long as there's a
Like Kubernetes
Kubernetes,
under the hood, as long as there's that control plane, you're
as
probably
long
good.
as there's that, yeah, as long as there's that control plane, you can bring it into ACM, and ACM will be able to see the resources and manage all of those resources. So just because you don't see the name of your favorite Kubernetes distro here, don't panic.
Yeah.
We
Don't
can
freak
we can
out.
help you. Don't freak
Yeah.
out. We can help. We can help. Um, you can kind of see here some of the resource requirements, right? So obviously, for the most part, we kind of follow the OpenShift kind of standards. So you can kind of see here, obviously the three master workers. That's a standard that OpenShift
Hmm.
has from 4.4 and above. So we follow that, right?
Yeah.
And you can kind of see the resources are nothing crazy, but just gives you an idea, right? Obviously, the
Yeah.
production numbers that we have here are very low for a production, because obviously we don't know how many
Yeah.
workers
It's
or
it's
Kubernetes
just
clusters.
it's just like Ansible or any other tool, right? Like how
Yeah.
much you manage depends upon, or what you can manage depends upon the workload or the thing that it's being managed from, right? So
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
you need to manage 3,000 clusters, this minimal viable resource requirement's probably not going to work for you.
Nope,
But if you
probably
need to
not.
manage, a normal, average, cluster amount, uh, you know, I'm assuming, I'm not sure what the performance testing has been done here on the minimum workload or how many clusters, because there's so many variants that can be supported. But the
Yeah.
assumption is normal numbers of clusters get supported with normal numbers of resources required. So
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly right. Exactly right. So, we talked a little bit about the managed clusters, right? You can kind of see some of the components here that, and again, these are just containers. When I say components, it's just containers that we are deploying into those managed clusters. You can turn it on and off within the YAML, so that is fully dependent on what you want and what you like, and what you want out of the product. Obviously, the more stuff that you turn off, the less the product can do, right? As always, right? This goes back to 10, 20 years ago, right? When it comes to agents, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Same,
Yeah.
same thing here, right? We have some role-based access control. We follow very closely what exists today within OpenShift. So obviously, OpenShift has done a fantastic job at integrating with, things like LDAP, like Active
Mhm.
Directory, right? And all of these standards around role-based access control. So what we did, instead of reinventing the wheel, we just follow what
Yeah.
OpenShift does. So you can see some of the roles here. Obviously, we will be expanding some of these as the application kind of grows, right? And then there are
Mhm.
some other things, but you can kind of see here some of the role access based controls that we have available for it. All right. So with that, I think it's time
Yes.
to get our hands dirty. And I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger. And I'm going to increase my font size because I know a lot of people are probably like, I can't see, I can't see.
No, I definitely can't see
Okay.
that. So
Oh man, can you see now? Is this good?
150 looks good. Audience, let me know if you can't see it, and I'll ask them to adjust. But I think that 150 looks great.
150?
Yeah,
150 looks good? Okay,
I mean, to
cool.
me it does, and I'm looking at it through a small window to help folks out there in little different resolution lands. So
Yeah,
if it needs to be
perfect,
bigger for you, let me know.
perfect. Okay, so what I have here is just an OpenShift container, OpenShift cluster that I have deployed. I deployed this one to AWS, so it's currently lives in AWS. It's 3 nodes and 3 master nodes and 3 worker.
Hmm. Can you
And
increase the size one more
one
for
more?
us? Yep.
Yeah, sure, no problem. We'll go.
I often forget the lag between the actual us talking and the actual broadcast landing on Twitch and all the other streams.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What are
So
you
okay,
using? OCP to kind of stream this through
no,
the sim?
actually, so we use a service called Restream, which puts it
Oh,
out
cool.
to all the various platforms, and
Nice.
but it adds a little bit of latency itself, and then Twitch and YouTube and Facebook all build in their own various latencies for their platform's
Yeah,
needs. So
for
yeah,
sure. For sure.
sometimes it could take as long as 30 seconds for the word I'm saying right now to hit somebody's ears. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to play with sometimes
it
when the
happens.
chat gets super lively. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No big deal. No big
yeah.
deal. All right. So what we're gonna do is go to the operator hub. So there are several ways that you can deploy it, obviously, ACM.
Hmm.
You can deploy it through a CLI if you so desire, right? So if you want to do like a mass deployment of multiple ACM instances, you can do that. Or you can just go through the UI. For the
Yeah.
simplicity, I'm going to go through the UI
Hmm.
and just kind of show you guys that. So you can kind of see here within the operator hub, these are all your different available kind of items, right, that you can install within your OpenShift environment, right? You see, because we start with A, we're right here, number 3, right? Not because it's built by us. It's just because
Right. It's just the
alphabetical
naming.
things.
Yeah.
It's alphabetical, right? But you can kind of see here that I can click on it. You can kind of see the version that we're at. So as I mentioned, right now we're currently on Tech Preview, Tech Preview 1.01. When we go GA, it will be 2.0.
Yeah. Hmm.
But you can kind of see here a little bit of the information about it. You can see, how to install it, what the providers types are, the repositories, the containers, all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I go ahead and click install,
Okay.
basically what this is going to do is a couple of things. So first of all, it's going to install itself into its own namespace. So
Nice.
you can either build your own, if you have very specific standards that you want for your namespace,
Mm-hmm.
or you can just let it install into what it wants to install in, which is open-cluster-manage. I'm going to do that for simplicity reasons. You also subscribe automatically to the update channel. So the beauty of having OperatorHub is that you no longer have to worry about updates, right? So when there's a new update, as long as you subscribe to that channel for ACM, you will get the update. You will get the update automatically, right? And of course,
Nice.
you can put approvals right behind it if
Yeah,
you
of course.
if you don't want it to just automatically upgrade, right? But the beauty of this is that you don't have to kind of hear from somebody else, right? You can go here, you can see, oh, I have a release, I can update it and look at the notes and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So very easy. So I'm going to go ahead and click subscribe. And so the moment I click subscribe, a couple of things are going to start happening. So there's of course a couple of workloads that are being deployed. So if I go ahead and take a look at my workloads and my pods, you're going to start seeing that there's a couple of containers kind of coming online, right? So obviously, we have a few things that we install on top of just ACM. So if you look at the install operators here, we also install etcd, right?
Okay.
And this is a specific version of etcd that we leverage to use for certain things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're going to leverage this for doing HA, right, at some point,
Yeah.
and a few other customizations. So even if you have it today, it will automatically install its own version within its own namespace, right?
So yeah, it uses etcd as a data store essentially for
Yeah,
itself, and as opposed to using the clusters etcd, which would just be a nightmare, or some other external etcd namespace thing. Nope, just keep it all in the same namespace. One etcd
exactly.
thing just for ACM right here in the namespace. Makes perfect sense. Yep.
Exactly.
And I love the
It's
fact that it calls the operator to install it too, which makes
yes,
even, yeah, I mean, that's awesome.
yeah. It automatically it calls the operator, it pulls all the containers that it needs, and it goes and deploys it. And look, we already are at 100% succeed rate, right? So if we go
Yeah.
ahead and look at the pods, we have 6 running pods, nothing pending. However, we need to do a little bit of extra configuration here. We need to go into your provider APIs for the multi-cluster hub, and I need to create a multi-cluster hub. But before I do that, I actually need to go ahead and create a secret. So obviously, in order for us to pull the images that we're going to be deploying into some of these clusters, right, we need to have an authentication method, right? And so a lot of the secrets will come directly from cloud.redhat.com. So within cloud.redhat.com, I'm going to go ahead and put this window here now. Within cloud.redhat.com, right? I'm logged in within the cloud.redhat.com with my username and my account and all of that, right? I will go into the OpenShift cluster management, and I'm going to go here and create a new cluster, then pick a new AWS cluster. And if I go into the installer provided infrastructure, you'll see here that I have a pull secret already generated for me. So we're going to leverage this pull secret and use it for ACM to be able to go out and pull those images directly, right?
Beautiful.
So, instead of having to go to access.redhat.com and kind of configure all your um, uh, all your entitlements and everything else. Once you already are entitled to ACM, you just need to go get the pull secret from cloud.redhat.com and then go back into your ACM. So if we navigate back to ACM real quick, I am going to go to my, let's see, where is I need to find, I always forget where the secrets are.
Under workloads.
Workloads. That's right. That's right. So I was close. There you go.
Yeah.
Secrets. There you go. I was already here. All right.
I,
Ooh.
this is where I come in.
Yes, this is where you come in, Mr. OpenShift. I'm still very much a noob at OpenShift, but learning very fast. So
I'm very happy you're part of it, though.
yeah,
Seriously.
no,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great. It's a fantastic product. So if I go into my secrets and I go and select an image pool secret, I'm going to go ahead and give the secret a name. So whatever you want. In this case, I'm just going to call it ACM. Keep it simple. And this is going to be, I'm going to upload a configuration file. In this case, I'm not uploading anything. I'm just copying and pasting. So I'm pasting that secret, pool secret that I got from cloud.redhat.com and put it in here. And this is going to allow me to, again, when I'm deploying images that need, some kind of like downloading the bits, right, to be able to deploy them into another cluster, it's going to use this secret. So
Nice.
if I go back to my install operators and I go to my multi-cluster hub, now I can actually create my multi-cluster hub.
Beautiful.
When I do that, you see here, there's a spec here for your image pool secret. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to be my ACM image pool secret that I just created, right? Because I like to keep name things very easy, very simple.
Naming's hard, but you can keep
Naming is
things
hard.
simple
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
name things
yeah.
consistently.
I remember, like when I first started, everybody kind of named their computer names. It was always like something like Star Wars related, or
Mine are Looney Tunes.
yeah, Looney
Yeah.
Tunes. That
I
was a
started
good one
off with the
too.
Looney Tunes characters, and I
Yeah, there you
still
go.
use that today for some of the boxes that are just lingering in the house.
Yeah, the ones in the house is something different, but when it comes to a
Yeah.
production environment, you
Production,
know.
no, I'm coming up with a better naming scheme.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so once we do this, you'll notice that there's a few more pods that are going to be instantiated and built. So what we're doing here is, you'll see there's a couple of multi-cluster hubs that kind of have to come online before obviously ACM becomes available. So this is going to take, a few minutes. You see here, for example, we're creating uh, a container for cert management, right? You'll see more coming here. So if we actually kind of sort by pending, we have an API server, right? A webhook, right? So you'll see all of these containers kind of coming in and getting kind of deployed here.
Cert manager, nice.
Server
Yeah.
management, right?
Uh,
Exactly. So
good
boom,
stuff.
boom, boom. They're all kind of coming in online here. And so this is going to take a few minutes. So
Oh, that's fine. I mean,
yeah,
I to be honest with you, I'd like to see what other components it pulls in, because if it's pulling in
yeah,
Cert Manager, that's a widely used open source project. If it's pulling in, let's see, application chart, what is that? Is that for Helm charts? I mean,
yes,
there's
this is
all
for Helm
kinds of
charts.
fun stuff.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is for Helm
See,
charts.
I
So
mean,
there's a lot of, so obviously, a lot of these things that we are building with ACM are all based on open source project, right?
right,
So
exactly.
I like literally
We
all
had
of them.
the upstream project on the channel here last week.
We
Yeah,
do. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yep. The open stream within the GitHub repo. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna talk through that a little bit later on too. We're gonna kind of show you some of the resources that we have available out there too, because obviously, you want to get started. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find, where do I get started? How do I get
Right.
started? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you're kind of new to these technologies, right? I
Absolutely.
always, I feel like, when I talk to people that are looking into this product, the first thing that I tell them is make sure you take an OpenShift course. If you don't understand OpenShift, if you don't
Yeah.
know OpenShift, you need to take one, and you need to get yourself enabled in that space, because otherwise you're just not going to understand.
And we have a free one right now. I
We
believe it's
do.
still free.
Yeah.
Let me find the link real quick. That's free DO something. It rotates through our banners, so I just gotta look it up real quick.
Yeah, I see it. It just rotated
It just
actually. It
rotated
just,
it out or
yeah, it
in.
just, No, out.
Oh,
Uh,
out, of course.
out. Actually, it's learn.openshift.com. It just came back. There it is. I see it
Okay.
now.
Yeah, you've got learn.openshift.com, but then there's another
There's
course.
another one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's in the about section down here on the Twitch stream.
Oh,
Um,
even easier.
yeah. So introduction to OpenShift, I believe is free right now. Let me double check. So I'm not lying to you. If it is not free anymore, I'll take it down. But it should just be like
Free for a limited time. I see it
free
right
for,
there.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
red.ht/free.
DO 101. Yeah, I'll drop the
Yeah.
link right here, folks.
Yeah. Make it easier. You can't click on those banners, huh? Seems like you can't.
No, so like yeah, like in YouTube land, you in Twitch land, all these things like it's just video, right?
Yeah.
Like you can
Right.
only add things on if you're doing things with the platform directly, right? Like I
Yeah.
could maybe have overlays if I was actually producing this with YouTube Studio that were clickable, but
Right.
then I'm just limited to YouTube. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm trying to meet people where they are. So we put the
Whatever that might be.
anything wherever that might be. Everything that's in those banners though is going to be in the about section on the Twitch page. So if you're not following us on Twitch, we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. If you haven't looked at your calendar, today is the end of the month. It is noon on the East Coast. I have exactly 12 hours to get
Ooh.
12 more followers.
Oh, 12?
So
That's nothing.
come on, but this has been a journey, man. This has been,
Yeah.
this has been a month-long journey of getting to 1,000 followers. So the 1,000 follower mark is a goal I put out there as like this a big stretch goal. So yeah, like if you want to create a tweet and point people to this Twitch,
Of course.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Is Jimmy following the channel? Thank you.
I I I I haven't been, but I will be.
You will after
I,
this.
I will after this. I will
I will
like and
find
subscribe.
you.
Subscribe, link in the
Yeah,
bottom description.
Like if you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, please do. If you're not, following us on Facebook, please do. But if you're on Twitch, you need to follow us, please. Trying to hit
Yes.
that 1,000 number today. So
Well,
yeah,
hopefully we
appreciate.
will. That will be a hell of a milestone. That's a
It
big
will be.
milestone,
It'll be
actually.
like I'm gonna be celebrating here tonight if we hit it. Seriously.
Nice, nice, nice.
Like someone said, hey, maybe stickers would help. We're working on all of that. Trust me. T-shirts, stickers, the whole 9 yards. But keep in mind, this channel is only a month, 2 months old. So
Yeah, that's impressive.
on
That's
July 4th, it will be 2 months old. So hitting
wow.
1,000 followers in 2 months on Twitch is a big, big deal.
No, it is. It
So
is.
yeah, we're super excited that we're this close, let alone that it actually might happen today. So please tell your friends to follow us on Twitch, and I would be most appreciative. Like that little animation that happens when you click the heart, that's literally my heart every time someone clicks it.
It
So
is. I've seen it.
I've seen it. Yeah. See? All right.
Uh,
So it looks like we got 35 running pods here, man. None
yeah.
pending.
So non-pending. All of our pods are all up and running. So if we go back into our install operators, everybody is happy and successful. So this is still kind of finishing up some stuff, but the beauty of this is that now we can navigate into our networking and look at our routes, and it provides us a multi-cloud console location. So now I can actually click on this, and within a few seconds after I accept all my security risks and log in again,
Mm-hmm.
boom, now we have ACM on a very small screen.
That is tiny, yeah.
There you go. Now it's big. But
Okay.
but just like that, how long did that take? That was like less than 10 minutes.
I think we had like a 7-minute conversation in there as the
Yeah,
pods came up. That was it.
yeah.
Yeah, like that was pretty good.
Pretty
High
good,
five,
pretty
Jimmy.
easy.
I'll take it.
Virtual high five. There you go.
Yeah.
Done. There you
All
go.
right. So yeah, like, but you dive in and then you have, what are these blocks here? Look at
Yes.
these
So
things.
these blocks. So as I mentioned, right? The important thing to note here is that again we leverage the same authentication methods from your OpenShift cluster. So since I deploy this, I'm using the Cube admin account, really bad idea. Don't ever use this account to do
Mm-hmm.
this. I'm just using it because it's easy right now and simple. But if you're deploying this, make sure you have your permissions kind of set properly, right? But I'm using the kubeadmin account. I was able to log in. You saw there through the routes, I was able to get my URL. So this is now my URL for my ACM instance. And you see here, there's 4 blocks. So these 4 blocks really provide you the main use cases that we talked about. So the end-to-end visibility, the cluster lifecycle, the application lifecycle, and the governance, risk, and security. So all of these, of course, are going to be empty. I just built it, right?
Mm.
So let's go ahead and actually go and add a cluster.
Cool.
So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of set up my credentials. So there is what we call the provider connections, right? And the provider connections is where we keep all of the credentials for the public clouds. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and build something into AWS, just
Why
because
not?
it's why not, right?
Yeah.
It's
Most popular
easy.
cloud in the world. Might as well try
Most
it.
popular cloud in the world. Exactly, exactly.
And then,
So I'm gonna go ahead and put in my credentials. And for this face, I'm just gonna move the screen over here. You know, I love you guys. I like you all already. I feel
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
we're
No, please,
connected.
please, please feel free to not post your credentials to all the
Yeah,
clouds on public
yeah.
internet.
I mean, but I'm not gonna give you all my secret access keys and my,
Yeah,
I mean, we're all friends here. We're
we're
all
all
friends here,
friends.
but we're
Internet
not that close.
friends.
We're internet friends. We're not that close. We're not that close. So I am off the screen here. I'm just kind of going through and publicly getting some of my private keys, my public
Mm-hmm.
keys for SSH, my pool secret. So you'll know, we'll take that pool secret that we used earlier and put it in here, right? So remember when we pulled that pool secret from cloud.redhat.com? Well, I got to
Mm-hmm.
go back now and copy it again because I'm
Mm.
going to put it here. So after I get all of that done, magically, boom, I have a credentials already created. Look at that. This is quick. Of course, you can have multiple credentials for multiple different clouds, right? So we talked a little bit about what we support. We support Google Cloud, Azure, right? So the main big boys, if you will. And so let's go through and actually create a cluster. So from a cluster perspective, you have 2 ways of doing things. You can either create a new cluster or you can import an existing cluster. So we talked a little bit about this, how if you already have existing clusters that you have already built, whatever those might be, EKS, IKS, GKS, whatever it is, you can come in here and import, right? So whichever the case might be, you can do that. So let's go ahead and create a cluster. So I'm going to create a cluster. I am in Florida, so I'm going to call it FL2K20.
Sweet.
This year is amazing, as we all know. Best year ever. Not. Um, and then I need to provide a base DNS domain name. So a DNS
Makes sense.
name, pretty straightforward, right? I mean, I hope I don't need to explain this. If I do, then you might be in the wrong stream. But so from here, you can get to pick your distribution. So obviously, we are going to deploy OpenShift. So currently, when we create a cluster, um, we can deploy using OpenShift, right? So you can see the 3 main clouds that we support here. I can also turn on the YAML. So notice here when I turn on
Nice.
the YAML, here on the right, I get in real time, as I'm selecting options, I get the YAML kind of getting populated.
Yep.
The beauty of this is that
You
you can
actually get
take
to see the
all of this
changes.
YAML. Yeah, well, number
Yeah.
one, you can see the changes. Number two, you can take all this YAML, copy it, and keep it on a GitHub repo as my standards. So if I start building standards for clusters that I really like,
Mm.
and instead of having to go through this screen and select all your standards and everything else, you can just
Right.
copy and paste, right?
Yep. Done.
Um, Within the roadmap, we have the ability. We're going to have the ability to do this Now, from a GitHub, we're going to have an integration to GitHub. So you'll be able to push it directly from the product. So this is coming
Mm-hmm.
too soon, very soon. But for
Oh,
now,
nice. Cool.
you can copy and paste this, which is pretty easy, right? We'll select my credentials, so the credentials that I build, and it will automatically kind of put those kind of encrypted. So you see here, encrypts all, puts all my SSH keys and
That
everything else that I
SSH
need.
key is very public and it's private.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
That one is very public and private. You can
Uh,
kind of remove that. Obviously,
yeah.
you don't have to put that there. But you can kind of see here, you can pick what region you want to build, obviously this too, given that we are using AWS, right? We see all of the AWS kind of regions
Please
available
don't
here.
put it in US East 1. Do yourself a favor. Just pick 2.
Okay, okay, I'll do two. I'll do two. Yeah, US East one has been kind of a pain for
Kind
us
of.
because a little bit. We have run out of space. I mean, we have run
No,
out of
like
space
in multiple points of
in
time
multiple
in my
times.
year of
Y-
being on the OpenShift team, it's like, hey,
Yeah,
why can't I do? Oh, we hit our quota
we
again
hit
with
a quota, and
AWS. Yeah,
it's amazing, right? Because you're thinking, oh, it's AWS, they got unlimited workloads, so shit, they
yeah,
can't run out
nope.
of stuff. Nope, nope,
But
nope.
you've got a quota, and you can increase that quota, and we have a really high one, and we have hit it a few
Several
times.
times, several times. And so you can also pick your zones. So you can pick your zones for your master pools. So notice that I can split those between zones, put
Hmm.
in multiple zones if I wanted to. We're going to have 3 master nodes built by default. Again, as we talked about, that's just the default for OpenShift. You
Right.
can select obviously the instance type. Again, these are all Amazon terms, so
Hmm.
nothing should be strange here. You can pick how much the root storage is going to be. This is just going to be an example cluster, so I'll leave it at default. And you can also pick the same information for your worker pool. So I can select here for my worker pool, what zone do I want, what the instance types, how many nodes I'm going to put for that. You can add more
Hmm.
worker pools if you wanted to.
Oh, cool.
So of course you can do more here. You can also configure your networking. So currently we have 2 types of networking that we support. So the OpenShift default SDN or
Hmm.
the OBN for Kubernetes.
Nice.
So those are the 2 that we support. Of course, you have your cluster IPs and all of that you can
Hmm.
configure. I'm just leaving all of this by defaults. And then we have our purpose. So our purpose is with the labels. So the labels
Hmm.
really allow you to kind of identify clusters and kind of combine, if you will, clusters to say, what's the purpose of this cluster? So say I can start with something very simple, like this is going to be for my purpose of a development cluster, right? So it will assign a label of environment equals dev. What that means, you can identify it and build that within the product. And we'll use this environment dev later on as we go through the applications. So you can kind of see how we can move some of them into it, right? So that's it. I now added all of my DNS names, my cluster
Oh yeah.
name. I've selected my Quay image that I'm releasing, that I'm building into. I'm just doing 4.4.
Nice.
My credentials, my worker pools, my
This
nodes,
size, the whole 9 yards. Yep.
the whole 9 yards. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. Once I click create, obviously it's going to go into a creation state. Of course, that's going to take, 10,
It's spinning
15.
up EC2 instances. It's
Exactly.
loading OCP on them. It
Exactly.
is installing all the management tools that are needed for ACM. It's,
Yep.
for lack of a better term, watching paint dry.
It
But
is like watching paint dry. But
but it's actually not as slow as I would typically think.
no, it's
Um,
actually, so for the average, of course, depending if you're around a quota,
mhm. Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
it's like 10, 15 minutes. So
Yeah.
not too bad. Not too
I
bad.
mean, when you think about spinning up, 6 nodes entirely, with, three
Yeah.
three masters, a few workers, and off you go. Yeah, that's not bad.
No,
I'll
no,
take it.
it's exactly. It's not bad. There's also obviously the capability of importing a cluster, an existing one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is kind of how you can kind of see here
Mm-hmm.
what we were talking about earlier about all these agents or containers that we deploy, right? So obviously you have to specify a name. So specify the name. I'm not very good with names, as you can see, but
Mm-hmm.
you can see all of the stuff that you can kind of turn on and off, right? Again, the more stuff you turn off, the more agents you turn off, the less you can
Less
do with the product,
capability. Yeah,
right? So keep
exactly.
that in mind. Keep that in
Mm-hmm.
mind. Obviously, it's a
Yeah, you
twofold
might
here.
not want, maybe policy and compliance today,
Sure.
but how hard would that be to turn on later? I guess is that something you can toggle on and off easily enough, or?
Yeah, so easily enough, you can go back into your cluster config and just edit this YAML
Oh,
and
cool.
just
All right.
basically change this. So for example, I want to turn this IAM policy, right? I don't care about it. I can just turn this from true to false
Mm-hmm.
and off I go, right? That's it. Simple.
Done.
From a configuration perspective on the labels, again, you can specify labels here once again. So I can do and put this on my environment equals dev, right? And then I will generate a command. So what this does is that it actually gives me a kubectl apply command that I can copy here and go back into a cluster that I already have and execute this so I can onboard this cluster, right?
Wow. Awesome.
Um, so very simple, very easy. Once you do that, the cluster will obviously sit in a pending import state
Mm-hmm.
with the command here. So you notice that it's an encoded CRD command,
Mm-hmm.
right? With kubectl apply. The beauty of this is that if if you don't have to run kubectl, you can run OC if you wanted to
Right.
run
Yeah. Yeah.
OC
Yeah.
to actually apply this because it's pretty much the same thing. So you have the ability to do that. Once you get it onboarded, then you'll be able to see all your nodes, and once all these agents kind of come online, you'll be able to see that, right? So that's basically creating a cluster from scratch, importing a cluster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this will take a few minutes.
So I might have a cluster that you could actually import if you want to send me
Yeah,
that command. DM me that command, and
yeah,
we could
of
we could
course.
maybe include an existing cluster.
That'd
I
be
just want
cool. Let's do that.
it's sitting in RHPDS. It might just be spun down, so it might just take a second for me to spin it up and get it back on again. But
Okay.
let's see if I can
You,
connect to it real quick.
I think I have apparently hit a limit on Slack, so I can't send it over Slack. The
You
command is
can't.
too big.
Oh,
So,
oh, can you do it as a snippet?
yeah, probably. Let me try.
Yeah. All right. I installed Minikube yesterday, so I got to relog into this thing. Oops. Let's try this real quick. I'm doing this behind the scenes, folks. So
Yeah,
yeah,
same here.
I'm literally just logging into a cluster, and Jimmy is pasting me a huge command.
Yep,
Um,
pretty much.
yeah. Nope, the cluster's down. All right, I gotta spin it up real quick. Should only take a few
All
seconds.
right, you should have your snippet.
Thank you,
So,
sir.
all right. So now that we have that, while Chris goes and tries to figure it out if we can get a cluster, while this one it gets created, let's talk a little bit about applications, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
So applications. Applications within ACM are really awesome. In my opinion, once again, we talked a little bit about the journey, right? You just gotta go through this journey when you are working with Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
But some organizations are already at this point. They already have some kind of way of managing clusters, whatever that might be good or bad. They have it, but they don't have a reliable way of having their applications and seeing their applications within the clusters, right?
Right.
So within the applications, we have two screens. We have an overview and we have resources. So if we take a look at the resources, this is kind of how we start to build an application, right?
Yeah.
And the application is composed of really four major things. So we have obviously the application definition. So that's a YAML that kind of defines what the application is, where the
Mm-hmm.
application, kind of lives and resides. You have your subscription. So if you take a look at the subscription itself, it's just the deployables within the channels that allow you to have all the different versions, right? So you can have multiple versions or multiple applications, and you can deploy those around if you wanted to. Placement rule, as the name kind of states, is how you place that application. So in this case, you can place this application, for example, if you wanted to remember that label that we have, environment equals dev, we are going to use that label to kind of place an application. And that's how you kind of move applications around within clusters, and you tell it where it's going to live. And then you have your channels. So the channels really point to the specific repositories where the Kubernetes resources are really stored. So in this case, we can do things like namespace, we can do the Helm repo, we can do object bucket or GitHub, right? So we have multiple options here. And all of these are pretty much the standards, or have been the standards for a very long time when it comes to Kubernetes, right? So let's go ahead and actually walk through building an application. So I have here an application within a GitHub repo. So I have a couple of example applications that I like to use. So for example, this NGX application, and don't mind my pronunciation, it's a Latino thing. You'll see here the YAML of all of that application. So let me make this a little bit bigger for those of you that can see,
Yeah, including myself.
including yourself. You can see here the application itself. So this is just the raw YAML of that application. So you see here at the top, we have a few things that we need to create, like a namespace. Obviously, we want to place that application within a specific namespace. Nothing new here.
Yeah.
There's the application here itself. So it's got, things like the name of the application, what namespace is going to be placing in. Then we have the subscriptions. Then we have the placement rule, right? Where in this case right now, I have it just place it on every cluster. So when you do a cluster selector with the open brackets like this, you're going to deploy it, basically that application on any available cluster that's within the managed ACM. Obviously, you can tweak that based on labels. Then you have your channels, the deployables itself, and the subscription, right? So pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to do here, again, if you are dealing with applications with the Kubernetes, you probably already have this, most of this, because when you're building applications, there's pretty similar standards that you use for this, right? So you have to have a definition of that application in a YAML somehow, right? So you can take some of this and kind of convert it very easily to be part of ACM and onboard your application and let basically ACM kind of manage it.
Nice.
So the first few things that I'm going to do is create the namespaces, right? So to create the namespaces within ACM, we go into the top here, this plus sign, and there is what we call a create resource. So this is just for creating resources, any type of resources. In this case, I'm going to select my target as my local cluster. So when we're deploying or doing applications, right, for the most part, most of them can live within the hub cluster. Of course, they just the definitions of them will live there, right? And then the deployables and everything else will be within the clusters that are deployed. So I'm going to go ahead and uh, paste my namespace here. I'm going to create two namespaces. So I'm going to create this one, done, create it. And I'm going to go ahead and create my second namespace, which is an SSH. And paste that and create. Boom. So my resources are now created. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new application. And you can actually kind of create the namespace automatically within this application screen. I just kind of want to show you a different way of doing it, right? But
Cool.
I could have very well kind of taken all of this part of it and just kind of put it there, right, in the application screen. But I am going to go ahead and just build the application now. So I am going to copy all of this code. and go back into my applications and create my applications. So all I'm doing here is just telling it what the API version that I'm looking at, what type of application I'm doing, the labels for that application, the group where that application kind of lives, and the subscription for it, and what's the status of it, right? Pretty
Right.
straightforward.
Yeah.
So I click save. Now everything goes away. Now, after a few minutes, in the background, obviously we are kind of going through and kind of gathering all of this, all of the application kind of definitions, right? And it's going to build an application. So here we go. Now we have an application name. So obviously the application name is, we have built, we have our spaces, and now we can start building all of our resources for this application. So if I go back under my resources, you'll see here that I have my subscription, my placement rules, and my channels. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my placement rule. So if I go back into, and I'm going to move this here to make it easier. So my placement rule, again, copy and paste. All it's telling you here is all of my clusters are going to get this application. That's it. I could set this spec to just look at a specific labels if I wanted to, which we're going to do here in a little bit to kind of show you how that works. So we'll do the placement rule. That takes a few seconds to kind of go through, and done. Then I'm going to go ahead and take my my channel, right? So we're pulling, it's a Helm repo that we're pulling for this specific application, right? So you'll notice here that it's my Helm repo, and this is the path name of that chart that I'm pulling from. Pretty standard deployment, nothing crazy here for Nginx. And then finally, I'll grab my subscription information, right? So I created my channel, I created my placement rule, and finally my subscription. And you can see here, this is my subscription to the channels, and this is the placement reference, right? So to my placement rule, and what's the name of that placement rule. Done. Just like that, I have created an application.
Boom.
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 Mic drop.
Yeah. So while you were doing that, I was importing a cluster into your ACM.
Oh, cool. So let's take a look. Let's take a look.
Should be good. Everything said it was created. So
there we go. Look at that.
hey, well, that's
Look.
your yeah.
No,
Nice.
that's yours.
That's me.
That's yours. That
That's
is you.
me. Yeah.
Yep.
That was your name that you gave it.
Yeah, my wonderful name.
Applied to my cluster, which is available for upgrade. Yeah, that's
exactly.
awesome.
So you can kind of see here now
see
that
how now, if folks don't believe me, look, like we have to put in our airport code typically to request clusters. So if you don't believe me that this cluster is mine, look at the DTW and the cluster API address.
Yep.
It's from Detroit. Trust me, it's my cluster.
It is his cluster. There's no hiding here.
There's no hiding.
There's no smoking mirrors.
I just took the command he generated from ACM and pasted it right on my command line after I logged in. That's it.
That's simple,
and
folks.
It's a managed cluster now.
Yeah, exactly. And think about this. Think about if you have multiple clusters that you want to onboard, right? We are going to be able to do this with Ansible. So we're going to integrate with Ansible. And if you have massive clusters that you want to go ahead and manage and all onboard them, Ansible is your solution. Look at that.
Ansible. I
Ansible.
love you.
I mean, we cannot forget Ansible, right? We can't forget
No,
it.
never.
Ansible
is a wonderful tool. There's 3 projects that have absolutely changed my life and my career: Linux, Ansible, and Kubernetes. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I actually I agree. That's a pretty good list. That's a pretty good list.
I mean, like those 3 tools have absolutely changed my life. So I'm very, very thankful to all those communities.
I agree. And still, I believe Ansible is still one of the top GitHub projects.
It is.
Right?
It is right up there with Kubernetes as one of the top.
Yeah, they're both right there. They keep fighting who's above. But anyway.
Yeah. We're constantly playing neck and neck. But it's pretty wild to think about like how like popular Ansible and Kubernetes are, and how they can work together with ACM and everything else. This is great. It's all great news.
Exactly. I mean, that's the biggest thing that you get also from us, right? That obviously we have all of these wonderful other products that we can integrate with, right? So,
Mm,
very soon we're going to have cost. We're also going to integrate into the cost management within cloud.redhat.com,
nice.
Ansible, right? So we have all these other tools that are part of the ecosystem within Red Hat that we will integrate, and we will become part of, and
Beautiful.
that's where the power of the whole platform really comes into
That
place,
cost
right?
management piece is going to be huge.
The cost is going to be huge because that's a
Yeah.
big pain point right now, with a lot of customers, right? Because they don't really know some of the costs associated with some of these workloads. So, all right. So, Chris, this is Chris's cluster. Mine is still kind of creating.
Yeah.
Here's the beauty of this. Notice that it assign me the
Yeah.
labels,
It
right?
already knows that
So
it's an
it
Amazon.
already
That's
knows that
awesome.
it's an Amazon, right? It already knows that obviously I gave it that environment equals dev, right? It already knows that it's an OpenShift, right? Automatically. So it read all of this information.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives me their address, the cluster API address, as well as the console
Mm-hmm.
URL.
Yep.
So now I can actually go ahead and click on this URL and be able to kind of see the console, which I don't know
Did you
where it
click
went.
it?
There it is. There it
No,
is.
there it
Yeah,
is.
I
All
did
right.
click it. There it is. Right. I don't have the username and password because I imported it, and Chris was the one who imported it. I don't know what that is, but I can manage it. I can see it.
Right. You could do everything you want to. I can
I
pass you
can,
the username and password if you really
no
wanted
big
to.
deal. No big
Yeah.
deal. I mean, it's there. It's
Yeah.
obviously everybody can see.
Yeah.
You can also do things like upgrade it. So one thing that I also detected is that, hey,
Mm-hmm.
listen, you're at 4.4.3. There's an
Yeah.
upgrade available for you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when I click on that, it takes me, where do you want to go? Which version do you want to go?
Ooh, so fancy.
So you can go to whichever version you have basically subscribed your channels to, right? So my OpenShift instance is subscribed to the latest and greatest. So you can see here, I can take it all the way to 4.4.9. So pretty
Mm.
awesome.
Mm-mm-mm.
We can also see all of my nodes. So you can see the nodes that I have available. So I have 3 masters and 2 worker nodes.
Mm.
What are the instance types? They're running on US East 2. Whoop, whoop.
That's right, because that's where I
Uh,
run my stuff.
because it
I
doesn't
don't
fail.
I don't deal with US East One. I don't play that
Ex-
game.
exactly. But you can kind of see here, right, like all of the information about that. You can see that, look, it has one application.
Yeah.
What just happened? We'll
I
get back
want
to that in a second.
I have been using
So
this cluster for a couple weeks. It's entirely possible. There's an
it's
app on
entirely possible.
there.
It's entirely possible that it has an application, or maybe we already deploy an application. We'll
Hey,
see.
who knows? Yeah.
Who knows?
Mm.
So yeah, pretty simple, just like that, right? You can see very easy to kind of either create your clusters or import your clusters. Pretty straightforward, right? So if we go back to my manage applications here, and I look at my applications, look at this. When I look at my applications now, wait a second. Isn't that the cluster that I just onboarded from Chris? Look at that. It
Mm-hmm.
already determined, right, that I already have these 2 clusters. I have one that's being built
Yep.
and one that's already built.
That's
And it's
awesome.
currently going and deploying that application because I created, obviously, you saw my placement rules,
Mm.
that I said basically deploy this everywhere. And
Yeah.
so right now it's working through and deploying that application automatically. Once it deploys that application, it's going
That's
to
great.
paint everything that's needed for that application within that cluster. So obviously this
That's
will take
awesome.
a few minutes, but think about that. I mean, a few clicks, we're deploying application, we're building
Well, I just
clusters.
imported a cluster and boom, application workloads went over there, right?
Done,
Like, I mean,
done.
that's
So think about if you have an application and perhaps you have a season where your application sees a lot more traffic than it normally would. Think about how quickly you can expand that application. Once you already have it in here, you can expand that application and actually increase your workloads immediately, right? Without having to wait. Pretty amazing, pretty cool.
it's awesome.
And you can
So
kind of
cool.
see here my placement rule. So this is
Yep.
my placement rule, and it made the decision based on the placement rule that I had given it to place it within the 2 clusters, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
will keep retrying. So It will retry and retry and retry until I deploy this application on that specific cluster. So it's relentless. It will continue to try to place this application there. So that's pretty cool about applications. I think that, we have a pretty good idea there. So let's talk a little bit about policy and security. So this is
Yeah, this
another
this
big
this is why I'm
topic.
glad we added another cluster to this.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
So notice by default, I have some policies already kind of built here, right?
Wow.
But out of the box, right? Sorry, I clicked back
Oh,
by
you clicked
mistake.
something.
Yeah, I tap my mouse just quickly. And, if you haven't noticed, I really like to talk with my hands. So sometimes I kind of touch things where I'm not supposed to. So anyways, so you can see here, we can basically, this is the overview pane. You can kind of see and break this down either by categories or by standards. So whichever way you wanna slice the pie. You can also look at filters, so you can apply a specific filter. So think of this as your landing page for all your policies, right?
Oh my gosh.
You can
Yeah.
see here that I have all of my, some of these policies already created by default. Some of these policies are pretty standard type of policies, like a
Yeah.
certificate policy, a namespace policy. I'm looking at the policies on the roles, etc. Right?
Hmm.
And so we have two types of remediations when we're building policies. We have either an inform or an enforce. So
Ooh.
inform is just what it's going to do is actually inform you, hey, you have a problem with this specific cluster, you need to address it, right? It won't actually fix it for you. Enforce, it will actually go and actually fix that issue for you automatically the moment you select your policy, right? I don't have any violations right now. Obviously, my clusters are still, again, I just onboarded that cluster from that Chris gave me. I have my other one that's being built, right? It's going to take a few seconds, but let's walk through creating a policy. So to create a policy is pretty standard. Notice again the same theme throughout the whole product. We have YAML available everywhere, right? So you can kind of see here all of the YAML. I can very easily copy this, paste it into my GitHub repo. But let's say I'm going to go ahead and build a policy. I'm going to build a policy for my default space, namespace. Um, you can see here some of the specifications that we provide out of the box, right? So anything from the certificate policy to namespace, specific namespace, specific pods that might need to exist, specific role bindings and role definitions. So if you're looking for having specific roles within your Kubernetes clusters that you must have, you can create a policy around that, right?
Beautiful.
In this case, I'm just going to start with a certificate policy, simple certificate policy. Notice that the moment I do that, it automatically fills in all of my standards and my categories. Now, as I talked to you about it earlier, we have different types of standards. We have FISMA, HIPAA, NIST, PCI, right? These are all out of the box. You saw it.
Beautiful.
We have also all the different categories. And again, we don't look at, when you talk about all of these standards, you got to keep in mind, there's tons of them, right? There's standards for every
Uh,
aspects of your data center.
yeah.
We are looking
And
at a subset of those, right?
yeah, and I can't even begin to tell you there's a number of standards that exist within like the Department of Defense here in the US or
Oh,
other government agencies across the globe. I mean, it only gets deeper and deeper as far as what kind of thing people think of as a policy or standard that must be applied for a certain environment. It's pretty wild.
it is, and it can get very complicated very, very quick.
Yeah.
The good thing about this is that we are ever so changing, and we are adding more and more policies. We will also have a standard Git repo where you can go and pull policy samples, just like I pulled an application sample just now. Same thing. We're going to have all of that available for you to kind of build all of these policies, right? Because we don't want to limit you to the standards that we offer out of the box. We
Yeah.
want you to kind of implement your own standards. If there are certain specific things that your cluster must have, then you can go and define those there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to also do a cluster binding. So you can do the cluster binding a couple of different ways. You can bind this by a specific cloud. So if obviously I have all my clusters right now Amazon, I can bind it to that. I can bind it to my labels. So my environment equals dev, or by vendor, right? Or by name. So you can define that whichever way you like. In this case, I'm just going to keep it with my environment equals dev. And so notice here that you have the ability to enforce or inform that policy. So by default, I always leave it as inform when I'm creating policies, because I want to make sure that, I see these violations before I actually go and change them, right? Pretty soon we will be implementing some kind of approvals for this too. Right now
Oh,
it's just
okay.
kind of open
Yeah.
without really necessarily having approvals, right? But we will have approvals here very shortly.
Cool.
So just like that, I created a policy, right? That's going to look at my certificate for my default namespace, right? So obviously this is going to take a little bit to kind of go through and kind of scan it, right? And see if I have any kind of violations. But you can also see the YAML of that violation here. So that same YAML that we saw earlier when we were building it, I can go in here and kind of click the edit button, and I can change my remediation action, for example, if I wanted to, or I can change any kind of configuration within here and submit it. So very easy to kind of change and move these policies. Boom, look, it already found a problem with your cluster.
Oh,
So
of course.
your cluster is already not compliant. So let's see why it's not compliant. Let's
Probably
see,
because
no,
it's
no
like Chris Short
violations.
touched this cluster, violated.
Yeah.
Who knows what he did to this thing?
So we can see here that the API version for the specific, it's compliant there, but it's not compliant for this policy example.
Oh,
So
certificate policy is out of
the certificate
compliance.
policy, yeah, it's not compliant. So you can kind of go through and actually fix it, right? So we can actually make this an enforce and actually fix it, right? Look, it just became compliant. Did you do something in the back end there?
No,
No. Okay.
no.
So it was just probably taking a second to actually go through and scan
Yeah,
it.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it took a second, but now it's compliant. So you can see it went from red to green. So it took a second there, but you can kind of see here again what those violations that it's kind of looking for, right? And I have another environment here that has a few more clusters and cluster violations. So let's kind of show you that. That way you can kind of see this. But if I look at my governance risk here for these clusters, I see I have a lot more violators in here, right?
Mm.
You can actually
Hmm.
see here, I can see what some of the violations are. So you can see what my clusters are, what the rule violation is, right? So this is a policy certificate violation, right? If I go deeper into it, so if I go into the clusters, you can see what it shows you each individual cluster that actually has a violation. So you can see, and what those violations are, right? So you can actually see the policies and see what those violations within that those rules are. So for example, in this case, for this namespace policy, I'm having they should have a prod. Then that prod portion of that is missing, right? That's a policy that I created just to kind of as an example. We can see also a role binding policy here. We have a specific role that we're missing, right? So it gives you that visibility into your clusters around all these policies, right? And again, you can let your imagination run wild here as far as policies and what kind of policies you want to have. So pretty cool. All right, so that is policies. Now, there's two more things, and I think we're kind of getting towards the end here. But there's two more things that I kind of want to talk about, and that is the Visual Web Terminal. So the Visual Web Terminal, you can either open it within the current browser. So I'm going to just open it here. As the name states, it's a Visual Web Terminal. So you can actually perform OC and kubectl commands from here. One of the first things that I like to do about this, because I'm all about the darkness. So I like to set my screen
Okay,
here to dark,
nice.
right? And we all love this, pretty standard. I can actually do things like kubectl, get namespaces. It can show me all of my namespaces that are available for my cluster. And the beauty of this is that, and this is why it's called visual, right? I can
Hmm.
actually go and click into this and it will automatically generate the command. So you can kind of see it here at the bottom. It generated that command for me, and it brings me all of those resources within that namespace. So now I can see what my resources are. So you can see here, I have 3 pods. If I click on those pods, it shows me what those pods are. I can go and click on those and um, see specific conditions. I can also see what those containers inside of it are, right? So you can kind of see here the logs for that specific container. So think about when you're trying to troubleshoot any kind of issue within your Kubernetes environments, right? How awesome it is to just be able to kind of, without leaving the tool, you can just manage all your Kubernetes clusters directly from here, even if you wanted to do it from a CLI perspective. Great. It's pretty great. And again, this is all based on an open source project, of course. So again, all of these, everything that you're seeing today, like we use Hive, for example, for onboarding and creating
Yeah,
clusters, right?
open source project from us, Hive. Yeah.
Open source
Yep.
project from us, right? So all of these, the visual web terminal is QUI, or KUI, QUI.
Hmm.
I'm probably mispronouncing that, but
Yeah, I have no idea how to pronounce it. KUI is
yeah,
fine.
KUI. That's available, and that's basically the open source project that we use in the backend for this. So everything that we build for this product is all open source. So pretty great. Another thing that I want to kind of show you guys is the search. So the search this is part of the visibility type of use case that we talked a little bit about for the IT operations perspective, right? So if you wanted to kind of look and see how many resources I have available for that specific cluster, right? So I can actually go through and see created the last hour. So
Ooh,
I can see all of the resources that have been created within the last hour. Obviously, this is a brand new environment. I created a bunch of stuff within the
everything.
past hour, everything. I built it from scratch. Look at this. I can see all of my resources in a very easy to read, very easy to
So,
consume
quick
perspective.
question on this though is if it's created in the last hour, does it apply to ACM or the node itself? Because like my node is like a week or so old, and
It just
ACM here is what, not even hours old, right? So
not even an hour. So this only
yeah,
applies to the resources that we onboarded into ACM. So
okay,
not
so it's
the hub
already there.
cluster, not the
Okay.
hub cluster, just the resources that we're managing. So all your cluster that you built like a week ago,
Hmm.
when we brought it into ACM, the clock kind of started, right? So
Makes total sense. Okay, cool.
it became
Yeah,
an ACM resource at that point.
that
And
makes sense.
so
Yep.
once it became an ACM, then you can kind of see all of that. And again, you can see here all of the things that we can kind of look through, right? So we can look at, you know, finding resources within Kubernetes is very complicated. I mean, you can see all of these things that we have created within the past hour, and
Right.
again, it's unbelievable, right? So
Yeah.
I can see all of my, for example, let me pick one here. I don't know. Let's look at all of the related images, for example,
Oh yeah, totally.
right? So you can actually, it will actually maximize this and show you all of the related images. And you can go and click on those resources and go dive deeper and look at the YAML. So this was probably a bad example, but let's see if I can find a good example of being able to see those resources. But think about being able to kind of look at and modify. So let's look at a replica set, for example,
Hmm.
for the cluster. You can see here all of your YAML. You can actually go and edit this directly. So if you're troubleshooting issues for applications or clusters or anything like that, the search is a really powerful tool to be able to kind of sort through and kind of go through all the noise, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of noise within Kubernetes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to take a look at the workloads, you can kind of see all of the workloads that are available. I can see all of my related endpoints, for example. I can see all of my related clusters, related pods, right? And you can actually create all these searches. So notice that this is just like a free, well, not free form, but it's like a filter based field that you can kind of select multiple filters and apply these filters and kind of build your search that way.
Nice.
We provide you with 3 main searches. We're gonna obviously have more and more as the product kind of expands and grows. You can also save your own. So if you create your own policy and you like to have your own policy, you can go ahead and create and save that, and it will have be a policy here. But you can have obviously all those safe searches here. So say if I want to see all the clusters uh, within my local cluster, right? So all my resources within my local cluster, it will show me all of that there. So fantastic use to be able to kind of see all of that. So yeah, that is a pretty good overview here of ACM. You can see here the overview page now is starting to kind of build out. So when we first kind of started, obviously we didn't have like a clear view of what we had. Obviously, we didn't have anything. It was a brand new environment that we just built from scratch. But you can kind of see here all of my nodes, all my regions, my pods, and notice that I can click into any of these. And when I click into any of them, it automatically brings me to the search. So it's just another way
Nice.
for you to be able to kind of go through and kind of navigate there. You can also see the topologies. So not only the topology from the application perspective, but also the topology of the clusters. So you can take a look at my topology of my dev cluster, right? You can see my applications, say select my application here, right? And it's still kind of working through. It started, right? So it's about 35 minutes ago that it started.
Mm-hmm.
And it's deploying all of that. And then you can kind of see all of my policies as well, right?
Nice.
Whenever I select those policies, and you can kind of see it's just a visual representation of do that, right?
Yep.
Um, so pretty
That's cool.
straightforward, pretty easy. Yeah, I think, you know, I think I think this is an amazing product that really will really help you to kind of be able to kind of get that uh, control over your Kubernetes environment and your multi-clusters. So
Yeah. So if you're in a multi-cluster environment, which a lot of our customers already are, it's just kind of the nature of the beast, right? Like we all thought, even Red Hat, that we thought that we'd have, few large clusters, and it's kind of evolved in the way the not the ease but the kind of adoption of Kubernetes and the way we've been able to make testing on Kubernetes a little bit faster. The multi-cluster thing has become a big deal because instead of just having an application team with one namespace, now they want 20 namespaces, so the team gets clusters, right? So it's like
right,
the exponential growth of clusters once you start adopting them like in force and in mass as a company, is a thing that could happen. So managing that is vitally important because it's going to cost you money in the end. If you're not using those resources, you're using containers, great, you're getting the most density out of the compute you're using. But if you're not using the compute, what's the point in having it? So managing these things and being able to see the utilization, being able to figure out, once we add that cost management piece, exactly where your money is being wasted or could be gained. It's going to be a really, really awesome add-on when that gets your ooh, wow. But yeah, having this pane of glass to manage not just clusters but applications as well as compliance is vital, right? Like things get convoluted and confusing very quickly. You saw that just with 2 clusters, we had hundreds of images available to us,
yeah,
and if we need a search function across all of our clusters, something like that doesn't natively exist in
right,
Kubernetes
no,
in native Kubernetes land, right? Like you're
no,
putting together a string of commands essentially at that point,
right,
and you're hoping you get all the outputs correct when you pull those APIs. So having ACM in your environment, I think, is a very wise decision.
Yeah.
Having something along the lines of policy management, I think, is a even wiser decision because,
Application, you
yeah,
know?
like if you want your applications to be managed consistently across an entire fleet of clusters, as well as having policy applied to it, but that is a bear, right? Like doing that on your own is going to be a bear and potentially rife with mistakes. So, having ACM here, it's got your back, right? Like it's going to tell you what's up if something's wrong, if you have it in
Exactly.
inform mode on a policy. It's awesome.
Exactly. And so I want to do a little bit of self-promotion, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, man.
So I kind of wanted to bring up. So we have a YouTube channel that
Oh,
we are
sweet.
starting to grow
Cool.
quite a bit. So right now we have just a couple of videos out there that we have put it out. They're very short. They're 4 to 5 minutes. We know this generation likes to consume things on 5 minutes. Maybe
Oh,
10.
come on. This is like a 3 hour. We're at over 2 hours now. Come on, man.
We are 2 hours.
we're over
Yes.
2 hours on this
Yes.
stream right now. So yeah.
Nice. I
Um,
feel like Joe Rogan. Um, but yeah, we have these videos that we're putting out. Please subscribe to the channel. It's called Red Hat Videos. And we have the Advanced Cluster Management playlist that kind of covers some of the stuff that we talked about today, from the installation to importing your clusters to application lifecycle, policy overview. We're going to be coming out with more videos like APIs and how to interact with APIs, how to extend the product outside of what we provide, right? So to do things like integrating with Ansible, for example, and other Red Hat products. So we're
mhm.
going to be growing this very, very fast. So highly recommend this. I can give you
Yeah,
the actual link.
can you drop the URL to me so I can drop that across the chat platforms here?
Yeah, perfect. You got it.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. So
Perfect
there's
little
your link.
playlist for every. Well, come on,
Yeah.
Slack. Really, Slack? You know. Okay, good. It didn't crash. That would be
Oh,
like
you got
perfect.
you got the spinny circle, the spinning
Yeah, man. I got the
wheel.
little pinwheel of death
The
just on a
pinwheel.
Slack message.
Oh, that's not good. That's not good. That's
Yeah,
not good.
no, but please check out the videos they put
Yes.
together, right? Like it's going to give you a little bit better uh overview over this, and then maybe you can dive back into parts of this video as you come
Yeah.
along and hit parts and pieces. Please feel free to like if you want Jimmy or somebody else or anybody, someone on the ACM team to come on and demonstrate policies better, or we already had the suggestion of having a stream on using ACM to migrate to 4x, right?
Hmm.
Like definitely
Hmm.
going to find somebody to help me with that, Jimmy, if you can point
Yeah.
me in the right direction, or
Of
if
course.
that's you, maybe I don't
That
know.
may be a
uh,
great use case for us to work through and kind of showcase it. So yeah, I mean that's
Yeah,
something that
I
we
think
can work through.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
Let's maybe tee that up as like you and I's next stream together, having that
Cool.
migration story in place. That'd be
Yeah,
pretty cool.
it will be.
Yeah, so awesome. I got the link in there to the playlist. We've got 900 and how many followers? 993 is what it says.
83. 83.
980? No, you got to refresh. We're over that.
No.
Hang
Oh,
on.
we're above that?
Oh
Nice.
yeah.
Oh, I'm
Oh yeah.
refreshing now. Hold on, hold on. Ooh,
Let's see. What
994.
984.
994.
We're 6 people away from hitting 1,000, y'all. 6 people
Mm,
away from hitting 1,000. So
nice.
please hit that heart button. That's all I'm going to be doing today is like asking and begging and pleading people to hit the heart button because today is the last day of June and we are so close. Um, yeah, so like I'm super excited. And folks in chat that are talking about Go is actually one of the few languages that I know and was able to pick up without having a big CS background at all.
Nice.
So yeah, so Go is the primary language of Cloud Native, which
Hmm.
yeah, it's what is used to write Kubernetes. So yeah, pick up Go if you need to learn a new language or you're in the market there for
Yeah, it seems
learning a
like
new language.
I think Go is definitely one of the ones that most popular today. I think
Hmm.
alongside Java, probably Java would
Java,
probably then.
Go,
Yeah.
The Python,
Python.
big
Yep.
strong one out there.
Yeah.
The up and comer is Rust. These days I hear more about Rust
Yeah.
every day, it seems like. So yeah, we're out here. We're here to help you with whatever runtimes and applications you need.
Awesome.
So yeah, Narendev says they are only 1 hour and 30 minutes away from July 1st. So Narendev, if you could get 6 people to get that happening in the next 30 minutes, I could probably take the rest of the day off. I'm joking.
Ooh. I mean, you're already taking Thursday. You're already taking Friday off. So
Well,
I think.
yeah, I do get Friday off. Never mind. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Oh, wait. Siwa 55 has one more question.
Okay.
Okay, so let's hang on. Let's see. And thank you everyone in chat today for helping out each other. Like that's the best part about this chat. I feel like, um, is it better to do things with vanilla K8s versus OpenShift? Ballerina, has it been on the rise? Ballerina, I heard about a few years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was KubeCon 2018 is kind of when they hit their peak. I feel like maybe. I don't know. It's
I mean,
out there. It's useful. I'm not going to knock it or anything, but it's not widely adopted like the other languages
here's
are.
here's my
And
response to that. Right. Like
to the vanilla Kubernetes question.
yeah,
Yeah.
to a vanilla Kubernetes question. I think
Yeah.
the way to look at it is this. If you are implementing any kind of Kubernetes solution within a data center, besides looking at the ability of obviously what's going to be developed for that platform later down the line, you also got to look at the supportability. What kind of support do you have? Yeah, having an open source community is fantastic. Obviously, we have that, but being able to kind of pick up the phone and when there is a major outage, a major problem, it kind of plays into it. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
evaluating different type of Kubernetes, different type of competitors that exist out there, you want to make sure that you also look at the supportability. What kind of support do I get with this, right?
Right.
Because if you don't have support, you can have the best distribution out there, but we know how quickly this market moves.
Yeah.
It if you don't have new features, new implementations, new then what? Like you're gonna stay still, and then you're gonna be, within 6 months to a year, you're gonna be looking at migrating to something else. So
Right.
you gotta, when you're evaluating these things, you gotta make sure you look at everything, not just you gotta look at the how much support there is, and what's available. So
And I think we have multiple answers to the vanilla Kubernetes question. Jafar pasted the best answer, I think, to the question, which is his enterprise Kubernetes blog post. Uh, there is so much to cloud running applications in a cloud native manner that just Kubernetes is never enough, right? Like that's just the beginning, right? Like when Kelsey Hightower says Kubernetes is not the destination, he is 100% correct. And that is Kubernetes is just the beginning. It is a bunch of APIs and YAML that create a control plane for you to manage applications and workloads and infrastructure services, right? Like so there's so much that you can just do with Kubernetes. But if you go and you install vanilla Kubernetes from like github.com/Kubernetes, where I spend plenty of my time, you're not going to get monitoring. You're not going to get logging. You're not going to get, like a clear lifecycle migration path forward, right? Like push button upgrades aren't a thing, right? Like it's a lot of problems that you're asking to inherit by starting off with vanilla Kubernetes. It's a great tool to learn with, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Go install Minikube or, hang on to Kind and kick the tires on Kubernetes, the API itself. But if you're really trying to get started with, I want my applications running in containers on a cloud native workload, moving fluidly throughout clusters and things like that, you're gonna need a shortcut. And the best shortcut on the market right now is Red Hat OpenShift.
yep.
And I can say that in all honesty because it's my opinion. And I typically don't lie to people. So yeah, there's a reason I work at Red Hat for Kubernetes stuff and not any place else. I'll just say that. Kubernetes is the start of the journey. It is definitely not the end. It is merely the infrastructure.
I agree.
Yeah. Cool. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you so much in chat today. The chat was so lively today. Everybody joining us live, everybody that's followed us. This is probably the last broadcast before we hit 1,000 followers. So how about Istio on top of Gates? We have plenty of we have a service mesh product on top of OpenShift that makes Istio a little bit easier. Istio is a beast. I'll just leave it at that from an open source perspective. Like running it on top of Kubernetes, like straight off of upstream is really, really hard. So yeah, OpenShift is my happy place. I'll just leave it at that. So I'll try to finalize again before another question comes in. Thank you, Jimmy, for joining us. We'll be back with Jimmy to talk about 3.11 to 4 migrations with ACM. I think
Great.
that's our next great stream with us, and that we could probably pre-stage some of that. I feel like, right? Like
totally.
a little bit, just so we can have some
straightforward.
apps running in 3.11 and have them migrate over, kind of deal.
Yep.
That way, we can maybe keep it under an hour if we wanted to.
That would be amazing. Imagine migrating a 3.11 to 4 with under an hour.
In under an hour. Yeah,
that's a pretty nice challenge. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, we're at 997. Come on. I kind of want to see the 1,000 roll
You want to
through.
see it happen live?
I do. I kind of do.
I mean, let's see. All right.
Let's make it happen.
I can't generate 3 people.
I think you could generate 3 people very quickly. I think we all can.
Let's see. All right.
I think it will be a hell of a milestone. It's a pretty cool milestone, to be honest.
Yeah, like I'm super impressed we're even close to it. So
I agree, especially for the amount of time that it's been going. And
yeah,
the amount of views.
mean, all of this has been bootstrapped, and just kind of we're very much in startup mode. I have a meeting, I think, either later this week with somebody that is a Red Hatter that has like a really popular Red Hat or Twitch channel on their own, and like he emailed me the other day. He's like, Chris, there's like a bunch of things you're doing wrong. We need to so, like the fact we're close to 1,000 and someone like a not professional, but a really good Twitch streamer is like, yeah, you're doing a ton of stuff wrong. It really kind of makes me happy.
I mean, it's a professional thing. I mean, there's people that make money off of this.
People, like what was it? Jeff Geerling, he put out a blog yesterday about what he learned from doing a live YouTube series, because he's taken the coronavirus time to do Ansible training for free on his YouTube channel.
Oh wow!
And yeah. So
that's huge.
Yeah, so like all that Ansible training is out there for free on his YouTube page, but he put out there, he's like, I am not going to change over to being like a YouTube rock star anytime soon. Keep your day job, kids. It's not going to make you money. Yeah, we don't make any money off of the channels or anything like that, but yeah, like the idea that people can make money off of Twitch and have huge followings, and like there's people that are streaming right now that I follow that are probably have like hundreds of people. Oh, who's streaming right now? Oh yeah, Lana Lux. She's a game dev. She's got 159 people viewing her channel right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like literally, she just codes all day and she just shares what she's coding, so it's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Rockhound also mentioned he gave away the book for free for 2 months. That's very true. Let's see. Why would I pick ACM over this?
What's this?
This is a link to topics migration on the OpenShift page. Why would I pick over
That's migration? An interesting one.
Start migrating your applications. It clicks you through to a doc. Yeah. That is several hundred pages, or not several hundred pages. Let's see, 3, 5, 6 with known issues on the last section is probably page what?
It's probably looking at the migration portion
It
within
it
the
yeah,
documentation, right?
using purely OpenShift, right? Like it's
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that's a
migration
different.
tools, prerequisites,
I
deploying the
mean, of course,
cluster,
we have
application migration tool. Like we have a
yeah,
cluster application
uh,
migration tool. It's for
sure.
migrating applications. I think one by one though, not
Yes.
like en masse.
No.
So
No. So being
I mean,
able
I'm
to
sure
kind
there's a
of
way to do it, but
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
absolutely every time.
So
Yeah,
every time,
yeah,
it's why would you choose one to the other? That's a very like generic question. We need to kind of look into see, okay, what exactly are you trying to migrate within that open? I mean, if you're just trying to migrate workloads, then yeah, sure, but if you have applications, you want to have more standards, you want to have, then that's where we come in, right? So I
yeah.
think so. But
So there's more questions in chat. So how is this different from IBM MCM? There's a softball. There's a
ah,
softball to you.
that's an easy one. Yes. All right. So MCM is multi-cloud management, which is an IBM tool. So for those of you who don't know, we kind of really didn't touch much on this, but
No, we didn't.
ACM really is a tool that came from MCM. So this was, when IBM kind of acquired Red Hat,
Hmm.
um, this tool lived within IBM or ACM. It lived as a feature within MCM. And so um, it made more sense as we look at, kind of the portfolio and kind of rationalizing and making things more seamless between the companies to bring ACM into the Red Hat side, because obviously, we had OpenShift, it managed OpenShift, so it made sense to just have it be part of our
Yeah.
portfolio, right? So
Right. Yeah.
so what's the difference between the two? Currently, obviously, nothing. We basically took MCM from we took that feature that existed within MCM and brought it as an individualized product within the Red Hat world. And so MCM, when you talk MCM, you're talking about more management at an even higher level. So you're talking about managing not only uh, your Kubernetes workloads, but you're also talking about managing your virtualization. You're talking about managing your bare metals, everything, right? So MCM is this huge tool that manages like overall like a bunch of other things outside of just Kubernetes. Um, so that's the main difference there. That if you are a customer of IBM today and have MCM, then great, you already have ACM, right? Awesome, right? Otherwise, you can just buy the product as standalone from us.
Yeah.
So it's just about choices. It's about if you have one, if you need more at a higher level kind of management, like again looking at your whole data center, right, not
Mhm.
just a portion of it, then yeah, MCM might be the right product for you. If you just want to look at manage your Kubernetes environment and don't really care about the mammoth that it is MCM, then ACM is for you.
There you go. Yeah.
Simple and easy.
Yeah. So I think I mean, this is where I think the IBM acquisition's already kind of paid off for Red Hat, right? Like in a
Oh yeah.
big way. Um, having the multi-cluster application or having the multi-cluster management tool by itself was something we already needed. But when you look at, oh, ACM is not just multi-cluster management, it's application management, it is policy management, it is cluster management, and it is all on one pane of glass. So that is a huge, 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 huge win for Red Hat to have that product under its portfolio now and working with our IBM counterparts to just make it better, right? Like
Yep.
the whole MCM team came to Red Hat, right? Like they're all Red Hatters now. It's pretty cool, but there's
Yep.
still folks, like there's IBM folks that literally not. It was very nicely done, obviously, and it took time, obviously, but yeah, like there was a team at IBM that moved to Red Hat. It was awesome, and they all have been like blown away from what I've been told by the welcome
They
they've
have.
gotten.
Yeah, they have.
I mean, Jimmy and
It's
I are, we've been at Red Hat for, about the same amount of time. And, talking to the just ACM folks that I have, I feel like they've been, welcomed very graciously because we do understand the situation that they were in, right? Like acquisitions are not fun. And if all of a sudden you have to move companies, that's weird and unexpected. So we tried to make this the most awesome place to be. Narendev, yeah. So sorry, there's a lot of talk about container runtimes. Everybody on the channel that's talking about container runtimes right now, go back to yesterday's video, the last video from yesterday. Scott McCarty and I sat down and we talked about container runtimes for 2 hours. Talked about crun, runc, and kata containers. crun and runc are OCI compliant image specs. I guess kata is too now. But crun is written in C, runc is written in Go. crun is for those high performance computing workloads. Runc is the typical default container engine or container, container engine under the hood of most containers these days. Builda is a tool to build containers. Yes, Red Hat made that. It is open source, but it is not specific to OpenShift. OpenShift can run any OCI compliant container out there. So whatever engine you want to throw at it, whether you're managing your containers with Podman or Docker, those are all OCI compliant. You can throw them at OpenShift and they will work just fine. Yeah. So if you have any questions about container runtimes, feel free to reach out to me at Chris Short on Twitter, cshort at redhat.com. I can provide you container information all day long. General info at this point, e.g., I have an OpenShift cluster CI/CD deployed to EKS seamlessly. Build a Tecton pipeline to help you with that. That's the best general info I can give you on this stream. Deployed seamlessly. Yeah, that you have to build an application deployment pipeline that puts it in the cluster for you. That's it. Yeah, no worries on the misspell there. It happens all the time.
It happens.
I get called Christ more than I want to admit. It just happens.
Christ the Savior of OpenShift.
Yeah, well, container savior maybe.
Container savior. Oh, okay,
maybe.
okay. That we're putting that on your signature.
Hybrid cloud hybrid cloud savior. I don't know. Maybe
hybrid cloud. I like the container savior. I like that
container
one.
savior.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anyways, all right. So thank you all. Thank you all so much for joining. Wait. Oh, Spots just chimed in. Amy says are we up to 999 followers now?
Yep. Yes, we are.
Deal? Oh,
yes, we are.
Are we gonna hit 1,000 live? Like I don't have fireworks ready.
Right? I mean, like, I was expecting fireworks.
Yeah.
You got so much stuff going behind you.
I know. I do have a lot of stuff, right? Like
a lot. Look, and you had a fireplace.
I have a fireplace going. I could do a fireworks display video thing for the rest of the week, I guess, during the streams. Yeah. So with 999, I think, or 998, I'm seeing
998. Yeah, 998 is what I'm seeing right now.
Yep, so yeah, with that, I think we're gonna cut the stream now.
Yeah.
And let's let this be what it is.
That's right. Great. And we'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That migration story is going to be a good piece. So yeah,
awesome.
We'll get that out there. All right. Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you all.